Hello and welcome to Succeeding at the Piano again. Today we're going to look at grade 2B of the method. In grade 2B, students learn their octave major scales. They also learn their tonic and dominant seventh chords, along with many other new concepts. They are really learning how to be fine pianists and musicians. Let's go ahead and listen to two pieces from the recital book. This first piece is an example of a blues piece. It's called Homework Blues. And then something completely different. Here is a wonderful example of students learning their octave scales. This is Country Gardens, which is an English folk song. The question at the end is, did the piece sound cheerful? I hope that it did. Now let's take a look at the lesson and technique book, shall we? Here we are in grade 2B of the lesson and technique book. The first two pages, page 2 and 3, are technique reviews. At first we see a picture of a boy sitting tall and long at the keyboard. This time he has a palm tree growing out to the top of his head. We want our students to feel well balanced when they're sitting. Then we have a review of the drip, drop, roll gesture. We want to have our students bring their hands up like this, feel like water can be dripping through their fingers. And then with the help of gravity, they drop their weight to their thighs. And then the last step is rolling forward, off of their thighs, wrist first. And that's the drip, drop, roll motion. This is a great way for students to feel that sense of arm weight dropping to the bottom of the key, and then the release motion of lifting out of the key. Next we have arm and wrist rolls. We want to make sure that our students understand that the playing mechanism is what is used for technique. It's not just fingers that are playing the keys. It's the fingers with the hand, the wrist, the forearm, the upper arm, and of course a shoulder joint that's relaxed. So go ahead and have students play any two white keys and then just have them do some wrist rolls like this. Right, so everything is moving at the same time in the same direction. We can do the same thing with the left hand like this, and then we can do clockwise and then counterclockwise as well. And while they're doing this motion, we have them look at their fingers and look for strong fingers that don't dent in at the first knuckle joint. On page 3, up at the top of the page, I call this technique making waves in your right hand. So a simple 5-finger pattern like this. The student needs to play with arm weight, with weight transfer, and with some nice wrist rolls. So sometimes we see students playing 5-finger patterns like this. Tightness going on underneath the wrist and the forearm. This is not healthy and it doesn't sound good. We also see this sometimes. Starfish or pancake. shake hands, right? Where the student is reaching and stretching for keys. Again, this is full of tension and the sound doesn't sound good at all. And then we have the bouncers. They're trying to get power and control out of the keys, but they don't know how to use weight transfer, so they end up pumping and bouncing. So this is what the student should do. Have the student drop to the bottom of the key for the first note, and then they roll their wrist to the right, and then they lift at this crest of the phrase. The fifth finger is really standing up like this, and then they roll their wrist and their arm to the left, and then on this last C, they have to push forward and off with your wrist. And I say, go ahead and make a splash at the end. So this gesture, the push off, is one of the 7 touch releases that the students learn in Succeeding at the piano. So you notice when I push off, my wrist is always pushing forward first. So do you notice that? This is the push off. Shall we try it together? Push off, push off. So it's a good, crispy, detached sound. And then the last technique exercise on page 3 is called growing up. And here's a little bit of arm and wrist rotation. The students can play this at different tempo markings. This is metronome of quarter note is equal to 69. 2, 3. As the interval gets bigger, the rotation can be more comfortable. And at the end of every phrase, the student pushes forward again for the push off. And then we could do it at 84. And when that's comfortable, have them do it at 100. So here the rotation really is not a rotation. The student goes in and out of the keyboard like this. And then you can do the rotation, starting with the third interval, the fourth interval. Okay. So the smaller the interval, the smaller the rotation gesture in the arm. Now let's turn to page 4. Students are discovering 6th intervals for the first time. So have the student play this 5th, and then move your finger slightly away from the thumb for the 6th interval. Notice that? You play the 5th, and then move your finger slightly away from the thumb for the 6th interval. Same thing with your left hand. Play the 5th, and then move your thumb slightly away from the other fingers for the 6th interval. That was let's move. So your students can tell you, oh my goodness, where the 5th intervals are and where the 6th intervals are. The next page students really like. There's Lavender's Blue, followed by Ode to Joy. Here's Lavender's Blue. And obviously, we're asking the students to find that melodic 6th in the right hand. Ode to Joy has 6th intervals in it, but it also has a harmonic 6. So we want to make sure the students are bouncing off each key, and really each one of those impulses is a push off because the wrist comes up first. Let's turn to page 6 together. There's a hole in my bucket. We'll ask the students to find and play the 6 intervals first, and then they can do that first beat practice where they play only the downbeats. eyes should be moving so that they see all of the other notes in the measures. This will help our students be very good readers. The students are reviewing the key signature of G major. And then on page 7, oh, when the saints go marching in. My goodness, this left hand going from the 5th to the 6th to the 5th interval, great technically for our students at this level. Students are learning finger crossings. There are 2 paths students can play. I suggest that your students play path number 1 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And then path 2, they play on the alternate days, Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday. So path number 1, the student concentrates on crossing under with the thumb. Have them play it 3 times slowly. They really focus on what they're doing, and then they can play it 1 time up to tempo. Here's the next pattern. Again, we want to make sure that the student moves their entire forearm and hand over the finger that crosses over for ease and fluidity. Notice that the thumb is alongside the second finger and the student sees this nice natural letter C. We don't want the student to force the thumb underneath the palm like this because this causes tension. So we don't want that. So have the student shift their arm a little bit to the left so that the thumb goes alongside the second finger. As soon as the thumb is played, then the hand is shifted again, so that the fingers cover the keys that they're going to play next. So that's path number 1. On page 9, students learn a piece called Black Socks. They also learn a valuable practice strategy called unit practicing. Unit practice is when a student plays from one downbeat of a measure to the next downbeat of the next measure. The unit is very small so that students can remember it and focus on a small little section of a piece. Students are to play that unit slowly and repeatedly until they get it right. You can tell your students 3 times in a row correctly, 5 times in a row correctly, or 8 times. However you think your student can do. So here's an example of a unit practice. 1, 2, 3. That's it. That's the unit. So your student can start anywhere in the piece and play another unit. So let's say they're going to say, I'm going to start with measure 5. That's 1 unit. 1 measure plus 1 downbeat. The reason why we teachers want our students to go past the bar line is because sometimes students get stuck at the bar line and they stop. And this unit practicing forces them to go over the bar line to the next beat. Once the students can play unit practice pretty well, they can enlarge or increase that unit from 1 measure to 1 downbeat to 2 measures plus 1 downbeat. Here's an example of that. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And there's the unit of 2 measures plus 1 downbeat. Now I'm going to start that same unit practicing at measure 5. And again, I'll play 2 measures plus 1 downbeat. Excuse me. That one was trickier. Let me do that again. And there's my unit. When students practice like that, they're concentrating on small little sections of the piece. They can make their units get larger, and in time they'll have units going into segments into larger sections. Now I'd like to play for you Black Socks. terrific crossovers, aren't there, throughout that piece? So the unit practice strategy will help our students understand those crossovers very nicely. Now let's turn to page 10. Simple Gifts by Erin Copeland. Practice the places where finger 2 crosses over the thumb. And I even put in the music in red. Roll your wrist and then roll onto your thumbnail to play finger 2. This keeps all 5 fingers together as friends, and there's no stretching or reaching for any key like that. And some questions we can ask our students is, did I play the melody louder than the accompaniment, right? Was there good balance between the hands? Let's take a look at Unit 3 on page 12 of your book. Here is a technique lesson with Mozart. Your students will be learning the C major octave scale. The octave scale, of course, uses every letter of the musical alphabet, and the students will use fingers 1, 2, and 3 twice in the scale, and that's why those finger numbers are circled. 1, 2, 3. Then they transfer their weight of their hand to the thumb. 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and put the metronome on at 88 to the quarter note. That's just enough times for your students to be comfortable with the new fingering. Now they'll play the C major scale going up and going down. Once they reach their thumb, they'll cross over with their third finger and back to C. We want to make sure that the scales are legato and even. So it's a good idea for students to use the metronome. So then they find the 3 most important notes in the C major scale. Tonic, dominant, the leading tone, which is always a half step below the tonic, and then back to the tonic. I tell my students, think about tonic as home, the dominant as a vacation that you're going on, and then the leading tone is the road that goes back to tonic or home. On the next page, the students learn the C major scale in the left hand. Look at that nice letter C between fingers 1 and 2, and they're going to cross over with the third finger. As soon as the third finger makes contact with the key, the thumb shifts and plants itself on middle C so that it's ready to play like that. I'll do it again. We don't want to have the thumb stuck under the palm like this. Do you see that? That causes a lot of tension, and the student will not be able to play scales quickly like this. So let's make sure that instead of having the thumb being stuck underneath the palm like that, it quickly shifts out so that it's alongside the second finger. Now the students are ready to play the scale. Descending, the thumb is alongside the second and third finger, the hand shifts to the left, and the thumb goes underneath the third and the second finger. pushed underneath the palm like this, because this causes too much tension. Playing a C major cadence, the student already knows the 2-note 5-7 chord, and now it's time to learn this 5-7 chord, where the student plays the leading tone. The leading tone, as you know, is always a half step lower than the tonic. So now let's turn to page 14. This piece is called On the Cable Car, and the composer, Mary Leaf, does a wonderful job with octave scales as well as the triads of the key. Now, pieces in this method lend themselves well to preparing for classical repertoire because of the moves, the independence of the hands, and lots of patterns, as you see. So this particular piece can be learned by unit practicing. So remember, unit practicing is just playing one measure plus one downbeat. And there's one unit. Now, that metronome was at 76, and I use 3 little koala bears as practice friends for my students. You can use whatever you would like. With my students, they like these little koala bears. So, the goal is for them to play a unit of music correctly 3 times. Every time they play it correctly, they can move a koala bear or whatever you have for them to the other side of the keyboard. So let's try that. That was very good. So the student can move the koala bear over to this side. And then we try it again. Good too. The student can move the koala bear over to the other side. Now let's say they make a mistake. Oh no. Well, they look at whatever you have for them on this side of the piano with longing, but they can't move it until it's correct. So they'll really focus hard, they'll do it for the next time, and then they can put the koala bear over. That's a wonderful practice strategy for young children. And when they get used to playing something correctly 3 times in a row, then you can make it be 5 times in a row or 8 times in a row, whatever you think that this student can do. This is On the Cable Car. So let's say the student can play the first unit really nicely. Then you can have the student try a unit of their choice. So let's say they're going to play from measure 5 to the downbeat of measure 6. If that's too fast, just make the metronome go slower. And again, you would use whatever you have to have them play a unit correctly 3 times. Remember what the student should do after they can play a unit of 1 measure plus 1 downbeat? Then they can increase the number of beats to 2 measures plus 1 downbeat. And that is the way for students to be successful when they practice. I'd like to play for you My Country, 'Tis of Thee. Here the students are reinforcing crossovers and cross-unders of various fingers, and they're circled so that the student really can see what they need to do. And there's a beautiful cross-hand arpeggio at the end of this piece. Do you notice that the student in this particular piece has a beautiful sense of repeated notes that lead somewhere, right? So something like this, and this, always want to tell our students that when they see repeated notes, they must move somewhere. There must be a crescendo that leads them to a phrase goal. In the next unit, students learn, with the help of Beethoven, how to play a G major scale. Here the students see the key signature for G major, which we know is the F sharp. And then one more time. Ask your students, what key does your fourth finger play? The F sharp. In the next exercise, the students play the G major scale in a musical fashion. You'll ask them to play with a crescendo going up and then a decrescendo going down. And again, the three most important notes of this G key is G for tonic, D for the dominant, F sharp for the leading tone, then a half step higher is tonic again with a G. When students play the G major scale for the left hand, what key does the left hand play? A. Remind your students to move their thumb quickly to the G that they're going to play at the end of the scale. And to see that nice rounded letter C and their four hills. Now the student plays ascending and descending. And playing a G major cadence. So you notice the technique tip on this page is the student can transfer the weight of their arm forward into the keys. That way they will have a beautiful sound when they play, and they'll play with a nice fluid motion. Now we have various pieces in the key of G major for our students to play. The first one is called Happy Prelude. The composer of this piece, Edwin McLean, put some very nice scale passages in the right hand, followed by scale passages in the left hand. At the very end, students learn a new touch release. This is one of the 7 touch releases the students learn. The students have already learned the drop and the lift of a 2-note slur. They've learned a push-off, where the wrist pushes forward and off of the keys. And this one is called a kick-off. The kick-off is stronger than the push-off because the hand, the wrist, and the forearm all kick off the key together at the same time, and the wrist stays level with the hand and the forearm, like that. A much stronger and crispier sound than what a push-off would be. Listen to the push-off. And the kick-off. Now let's turn to page 19, Fish and Chips and Vinegar. Really nice kick-off motions the students can use. Really good difference between the balance between the hands, whichever hand has the melody. Great contrast in dynamics, and a real reinforcement across unders of fingers as well as the tonic and dominant chords. On page 20 and 21, the students learn the broken triad bass. Here it is blocked, and this is broken. each note is played one at a time. So have your students point to 3 broken triads in the piece and have them practice these first. And they're all G major triads. Now we find ourselves on Unit 5, page 22 and 23. The students are now learning the D major scale in the right hand and the left hand. So, the key signature for D major is F sharp and C sharp. Chopin says, remember to play legato with a flexible wrist. Just a nice exercise for students to play. The tonic note in D is D. The dominant note in D major is A. The leading tone is C sharp, and that leads to the tonic note again of D. Playing the D major scale on the left hand. And which finger does your 4th finger play? Only the E. Let's have some fun with scales. And then the cadence. In grade 2B, students learn their octave scales in the circle of fifths. So we start with the key of C, going to G major, then D major, and then A major. Now let's turn to page 24. This is Morning Light, a lovely piece for scale playing, again, an independence of the hands. Now, playing in different keys engages our students to love music, to listen to the different key signatures, and to hear how each one is beautiful and different. And then the Galway piper. Students learned what the tenuto sign is, right? It means to hold it, to sustain the sound, and give it a little bit of emphasis. The next piece is on page 26, and the students learned what a waltz bass is like. So do you notice that I'm using a push-off for the second beat? The wrist pushes forward first. Have the student work on that so that it's nice and light. Do you notice me rolling my wrist? Did you hear that? See that? And we know that Johann Strauss Jr. was the waltz king of Vienna in the 1800s. at Unit 6 together on page 28. Here the students are learning more ledger line notes. Students already know middle C, D, and E in bass clef. And now they're learning the A in treble clef, which is a third or skip below middle C. This American folk song, which is called Windy Weather, is a good one because students have to read where that ledger line A is. And then the well-known Polovitzian dance has that ledger line A throughout it. Afterwards, you can ask your student, did you play with the forward direction in each phrase? On page 30, students learn ledger line notes above the treble staff. So, number 1 here on the page, have the student play guide note treble G, guide note treble C, and then a fourth interval above that is F. And here are some new ledger line notes, F, A, C, E. And of course, they're all thirds apart. So now let's name these intervals. This is obviously a third from line to line with a space skipped. So that's A to C. The next interval is a line to line with 3 notes skipped. So it's a fifth interval up, A to E. And then the last interval is a step from line to space. And those notes are A and B. Here's the Muffin Man. And now students are ready to learn the ledger line notes below the bass staff. You could have the students learn these all by thirds. G, E, C, A. In English, we usually say little limericks. George eats crunchy apples. And in order for them to remember that this is bass G, you can have them first find the guide notes that they already know, which is bass F, fourth down is bass C, and a fourth down is bass G that they learned way back in grade 1. Do you notice that with all these staccato notes, I'm using a kickoff in my left hand, so the hand, the wrist, and the forearm are all moving forward at the same time, and the wrist is not flexible. It stays in line with the hand and the forearm. Now let's turn to page 32, Calico Cat. This is a wonderful piece for students to review their 5-finger patterns, rolling their wrist to the right so they feel that weight transfer. When they do that, then all 5 fingers become all the same length. So the sound is very even. Here's Calico Cat. really good piece, isn't it? Do you notice the top two lines on page 33 are exactly the same, only the first line is higher and the second line goes one octave lower. Now let's turn to page 34. Here we have the A major scale. And the students remember the key signature of F, C, and G sharp. Have the students find the last sharp, which is G sharp. They go up half a step and they're in the key of A. Which note does your fourth finger play? Always the G sharp. Let's have some fun with scales. And then playing the A major scale in the left hand. So you notice there is little movement in the hand, but I shift back and forth. The wrist, though, doesn't bounce up and down. It's just all lateral movement. And then the A major cadence at the end. The next piece is called Floating Snowflakes. Here the students are reviewing A major triads, cross-hand arpeggios, the pedal, and of course the A major scale. Did the piece sound delicate? It certainly did. Where will the student apply that play, prepare, practice strategy we learned a while ago? Probably up at the top of page 37. Right here, they can stop and say to themselves, ready, look up to the next chords they're going to play, and then move, and they find 5-7 chord, and they would have to play the next line using play, prepare, practice strategy as well. They can stop, ready, look, move. At the end, do you notice how I dropped my arm weight? Released all the tension in my shoulder and my arms, and I received a beautiful sound from the instrument. On page 38 is the can-can. Terrifically fun piece for students in the key of A major. Students like to play it faster and faster and faster as they go on, but we have to make sure they keep it at an allegretto tempo. So did you notice all those kickoffs where the wrist moved forward with the hand and the forearm all in line with each other? There was a nice drop at the end and the lift off of the keyboard. Now on page 40 is a technique lesson with Brahms. Here the students are reviewing their minor 5-finger patterns and cadences that they learned in grade 2A. So I thought it would be a really nice review for them. Correctly. The right hand is supposed to be legato and the left hand staccato, like this. exercise is the exact opposite, where the right hand plays staccato and the left hand legato. On page 41, students learn the important legato pedaling. Another term for legato pedaling is syncopated pedaling. To connect one note or chord to the next, students need to learn how to do legato pedaling. So we're going to have our students use the ball of their foot, not their toes or the arch of their foot, but the ball of their foot with their heel flat on the floor. When students count and pedal at the same time, have them press the pedal down on beat 1. They'll continue to count 2, 3, 4, and the pedal will be pressed down. And when they count 1 again, the pedal will come up and then go right back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. I'm showing you with my hand what my foot is doing. 4. The foot never leaves contact of the pedal. It rises and falls with the pedal. So when the student can do this just by counting and pedaling, then they're ready to play some notes. So let's start with that new ledger line A note they learned. 1, 2, 3, 4. The moment they play the next new note, the foot comes up. The foot comes up and goes back down. The foot comes up and then goes back down. And the students should hear that connection of sound. Now let's turn to page 42. A beautiful Canadian folk song called Land of the Silver Birch. Students reinforce 5th and 6th intervals in this piece. On measure 13, they should play lightly on their fingertips. This is really that rebound staccato again, where the wrist just lightly comes up to get that beautiful, graceful sound. On page 44, the students learned the 8th rest for the first time. Let's go ahead and tap out that rhythm. It helps to put a big crescendo so students feel that forward direction going to the forte last downbeat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3. In the before playing point for the Andaluza piece, students should tap and count out loud the rhythm in measures 1 to 5 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's do that. 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Very good. Let's do it twice more. Then with your students, they can do it 5 times. 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. And you know we want to go over the bar line and get to a downbeat and finish a really nice unit. 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. double forte at the end. In Unit 9, students learn the F major scale in the right hand. Here the students play their fourth finger on the B flat, as you know. And this next little technique you can do with all different tempo markings for your students. And we want to make sure the students keep their wrists flexible. Keep in mind that the right hand fingering is different in the key of F major. And then in the left hand, it's the same fingering as C, G, D, and A. So this time, with this next technique, let's go ahead and let's play it with the metronome. Let's play it at an andante tempo at 92. Then the student can play it faster. And how about choosing something quite allegro? That was at 132. In order for students to play technique well, they should always be playing steadily and evenly. Now let's turn to page 48. This is an example of a theme and variations on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. The main theme is actually in the teacher part. And the students play a variation on it. There are a lot of nice crossovers and cross-unders in the key of F major in this piece. A very delightful set. In variation 2, the student has to work to bring out the melody in the left hand over the right hand. And then on page 50 is a wonderfully lyrical and happy piece called Here in Jamaica. The students are reinforcing a little bit of syncopation here. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 4, like that. And the dotted quarter note followed by the eighth note rhythm. So the student should practice that ostinato pattern first until it's very easy, and then the student should tap hands together and count out loud the measures 1 through 4 until it's really easy here. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And then students can use unit practice every day. Wonderful tenuto at the end. In the orange box, I talk about preparing pieces for public performances. It's very important for students to concentrate on how to practice a piece that they're actually going to play for an audience. One really good rule of thumb is to play through sections 3 times very slowly so they can concentrate on every movement they're making and the sound they're creating, and then play it up to tempo. Then they can play through an entire piece 3 times slowly and then 1 time up to tempo. So they get the feeling of what it's like to play in front of an audience. That 3-by-1 rule is a really good one for students to use. The last piece in grade 2B is called Boogie Man. This is a wonderful jazzy piece by Kevin Olson. And now it's time to go on to grade 3 of Succeeding at the Piano. And in grade 3, we're going to talk more about the 7 touch releases the students need to learn to be able to play really well and be wonderful technicians. So I look forward to seeing you in grade 3.